Hey, how's it going, YouTube? Checking back in with you here today. Just an update on my progress. Got a couple questions too. I just kind of mocked up the manifold, how it sits on here, and I've been asking the guys online at kat.org and all over how they would route the coolant to their turbo. Coolant and oil. I mean, I've got the oil pretty much figured out. But I do have a couple questions. I guess maybe we'll start with the oil first of all. Like, I mean, I got a reducer on there because you don't want too much oil going into your turbo. All it's supposed to do is just basically lube it up. And I got the reducer on there. This is pretty much the only way it would thread in by hand. It's actually starting to get a little bit tight right there. Now this is what APT Turbo said would work for the GT35R. So I guess my first question is that the direction it's supposed to go in? Like, I tried to thread it in by hand, and you can see the discoloration of marks there. It only wants to thread in on the one side, and when I thread it in there, it seems to bottom out on the beveled fitting on the inside. So I'm assuming that's how it goes in, and I'm assuming that's how far it goes on. I'm just curious if anybody else has put one of these fittings on. If I'm doing it wrong, you know, please stop me. I think I got it right. Either way, all a reducer does is make a smaller area for your oil to go through. So, I mean, as long as it's not going to be loose and allowing oil to escape and maybe get in around the water, I'm not too sure how it's set up on the inside, but I should be okay. Now, coolant lines. I've got the I believe those are -4 N fittings, or AN fittings on each side. There's one, and then there's the other down in here. And this is the part that only one other guy, at least on the forum, seems to be running it this way. I don't know if this is the method I want to go or not. I think it makes a lot of sense because other guys, they've cooled their turbo, or at least tapped into the coolant via the intake side. They've attached off of here because where the intake is over here, there's a coolant line that goes off through your throttle body and then back to the main system, back to the radiator. Now, what I'm thinking of doing here is not feed it from over here, but rather feed it from the other side of the block. What I realized is down here, this, you might not be able to see it here, this is a coolant port, and on all K engines they have it on the one side and it seems to be plugged off. As you can see here, it is on, this is, I believe, yes, 14 block. I could be mistaken, but it's another one right there. I believe that's a 1/4, or sorry, yeah, 1/4 BSPT plug, British standard or whatever. And I got it off there because this one went to the machine shop and I never ended up using this block. But I'm thinking what I'm going to do is run a really decent shielded hose, convert that 1/4 over to maybe a -4 AN hose to match this right here, and run my coolant up underneath the manifold, past the wastegate when it's sitting on here, probably on the back side. Ideally, I'd like to bring it up through here, but this manifold's going to get stinking hot, so I'm going to have to either have that shielded really well, like an expensive hose, or work a way to go around, or maybe a hard line, square it off to come up. But I'm thinking of bring the coolant from this side of the block through here, back over here on this side, and then trace it along the head. And, you know, you can mount it, you know, so it attaches to the head, looks really neat and tidy. Back here, over behind the engine here, there's none of the emission stuff that's on like the S13. I've taken all the emission stuff off, so I should be able to run it back down over this way into the firewall, into my heater core, and then have the heater core line come back and plug back into over here on the coolant side, or on the other side of the engine here where the thermostat is. That doing so, I would have to block off this line here, because this is what normally feeds the heater core. But I figure what I'm going to do is, instead of using this side, block this off and use it through the turbo side, bring it through the turbo, feed it back, heater core. The heater core will help cool it down because the heater core is essentially a small radiator, and then bring it back in over here. That's what kind of makes sense to me. I have this just mocked up right now. There's the oil system. See what you guys think about the way that I'm doing this. If I'm doing something really retarded, you know, stop me, let me know. But over here, 1.8 BSPT to -4 N fitting. That's for my oil. It's just sitting on there. There's my pressure switch. I'm actually going to be probably running a T off of here. The T will go to a oil pressure gauge in the cockpit or in the cabin, and the other side will go to feeding it like a hard line. I'm thinking the hard line I'm going to run up through the front of the engine this way, keeping it nice and neat, across, over, up, and into the top there. So once again, you know, I want to make sure that that is on the correct way. I can't remember the thread type I have on there, but I have the specs and everything, and I mean, I ordered it online. It should be the right part. It doesn't want to screw down any further. Didn't have any trouble screwing it down there. So I believe it is working just fine. So this is all mocked up right now. Other problems I'm going to have to deal with too is the oil return line. I've got this in my hand here. This is a -10 fitting from APT Turbo. By the way, don't order through these guys unless you have to, like you have a race or something coming up where you need the parts. Really fast shipment, but expensive. I paid $45 for $90 worth of parts for shipping up here to Canada, and that's just ridiculous. But, you know, it's the only place I could seem to find them online. But, anyways, oil drain, bottom of the turbo. It's going to plug in here, and then I'm going to have to run a hose somewhere down this side of the manifold, and then weld a bung and maybe a 45 on the oil pan down here below. Once I got that on there, it should be a very short distance. And you want to go big when it comes to the oil drain too, because you definitely don't want oil backing up in the turbo. That can easily cook bearings. Gets too hot in there, oil isn't circulating, cooks them. That's one of the reasons why this turbo and a lot of turbos are water cooled as well. It's just, it helps preserve the life of the turbo, because these things, they're exhaust gases, it's getting stinking hot, right? Another problem I might have to run into here, downpipe. Don't know if I mentioned this already, but the angle of my downpipe here, it's going to come back and it's going to be awfully close to hitting the rear of the head, as you can see back here. I'm probably going to have to end up fabricating a bit of an angle on here. I want to do a V-band, to be honest. And then I'm going to have to probably build an angle on it. I do have a welder now. Not the greatest welder. It's a stick welder, but I'll maybe piece together, tack it together, get somebody with a decent TIG to put it together. Somebody like these guys at Doc Race here. Like, that's pretty amazing welds that they've done. Honestly, I wish that they sold a downpipe that would for sure fit. But when you're going big turbo and whatnot, you know, a lot of the stuff is best guess when it comes to how it fits, how it installs. Like you can see, it's pretty close to touching. But I still think I'm going to be able to have enough room and whatnot to get this done in a few days. I still got to talk to the boys there from Miami, but a few days race lab, they're supposed to be sending out the AEM Series 2 EMS, as well as wastegate, crank angle sensor, the 24-in-1 disc, all that kind of good stuff. There's a few other things I'm forgetting, of course, too. I'm going to get it together. I'm going to actually think about installing the ECU in the car as a stock automatic and see what differences I can get with that, just to get, get a little bit familiar with the software while I'm building the engine up, drive the 240 around in automatic mode or whatever, and see if I can squeeze a little bit more power out of her. But it should be a lot of fun. It should give me a way to understand how to work the AEM system a little bit better. And and hopefully get this thing running right, because I really do want to break 500 horsepower with this engine. You know, I got the LS1 coils here. That's another thing I wanted to mention too. These LS1 coils are huge, cumbersome. Like I got them because they were cheap, but except for the sake of troubleshooting, honestly, like when I remove a lot of the stuff off the bottom of the intake here, like I'm looking to remove all of this coolant lines and vacuum lines and whatnot. I'm gonna end up utilizing it, but to a vacuum block, keep it a simpler system. I was actually thinking of a stealthy way here. I might look into mounting the LS1 coils somewhere in underneath here, and then just run the wires up top. That would be nice in theory to be able to do that, but it's still going to get in the way of the PCV system. I think I'm going to keep the PCV and all that, but I want to try to make this look neat so it's not ridiculous. It's going to be hard. Especially fuel rail in the way there. Might set it there, or maybe right on top. I don't know. I would like to use some smaller coils. Maybe if something comes on for sale for cheap, something like Maximas or whatever. See about that. See if it works. Maybe Honda CVRs. Some guys have been using those as well. Smaller coil on top would be nice, but anyway, this is kind of an update. Some of the questions I have, and you know, if there's anything that's going weird or astray here, you know, it'd be really cool to let me know for sure. You guys have been a lot of help so far with answering my questions. I've asked a lot of you via PM some of the same questions as other guys, just to get a matter of an opinion, because you know that's the thing. Like everybody has a different way to do these engine builds, and sometimes it works better than others. Some things didn't work for some guys, and it's always good to know, you know, how that worked out for them. But I don't know. That's where she is right now. That's a freaking huge turbo, isn't it? I'm actually a little bit scared of it. I'm scared of that and my cams. I got a, you know, 280 cam with a GT35 82 turbo. I mean, this housing on here is huge. I should have went for the next size smaller, which is a 63 or 60. I think it's a 64. But I think it's going to go on there just fine. I probably won't see any power until about 4,500, but then when I do get that power, I'm going to be able to change the rotation of the earth. At least for 10 minutes before my head lifts and I, you know, cause pistons to fly out. But whatever happens, you're going to make the best of it. But thanks. That's my 13-minute update. Sorry.